The coffee had gone cold an hour ago. Garrett Thornwood stared at it anyway. Steam no longer rose from the chipped mug. The liquid sat black and still, like something dead. Outside the window of his repair shop, Clearwater, Montana prepared for Christmas. Lights blinked on storefronts. Families walked past carrying shopping bags filled with wrapped boxes and forced cheer. Bear watched them through glass smudged with fingerprints and old rain. He did not see joy. He saw obligations. Rituals people performed because the calendar demanded it. December 19th. Tomorrow would mark 6 years. 6 years since the drunk driver crossed the median. 6 years since the sound of metal on metal. 6 years since his daughter's hand went limp in his. The shop phone rang. Bear let it go to voicemail. The machine clicked on. Jerome Collier's voice filled the empty space between engine parts and old motorcycles. Bear, it's Axel. Helena Toy Drive wraps up at 4. We're rolling out after. Storm's supposed to hold off till tomorrow night, but you know how that goes. Call me back, brother. Bear picked up his cold coffee. He set it down without drinking. His hands looked old in the fluorescent light. 67 years of living showed in every scar and callus. The tattoo on his left forearm had faded to blue-gray. An eagle clutching dog tags. Beneath it a name he could barely look at anymore. Emma Rose Thornwood. Forever 9. Forever gone. The Gulf War had given him scars he could explain. Machine gun fire across his shoulder. Shrapnel in his thigh. Those wounds closed, they healed. The wound that opened on Christmas Eve 2018 never stopped bleeding. He had been riding behind the family car that night, his motorcycle following his wife's sedan. Emma sat in the back seat singing along to Christmas carols. Her voice carried through the cold December air every time they stopped at red lights. She was excited about tomorrow, about presents under the tree, about cookies for Santa. The other car appeared without warning, headlights swerving across lanes. No time to brake, no time to warn them. Just impact, just the sound that would live in Bear's skull until the day he died. He reached them before the ambulance, ripped the door open with hands that shook so hard he could barely grip the metal. His wife Sarah unconscious in the front seat. Emma in the back, eyes open, looking at him with confusion that turned to fear. Bear held her hand. He told her she would be okay. He told her help was coming. He told her he loved her. She tried to speak. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then her eyes changed. The light behind them dimmed, then disappeared. The paramedics arrived 4 minutes later. 4 minutes too late. Sarah survived with a fractured skull and broken ribs. She left him 14 months after the funeral. Not because she blamed him, because they could not look at each other without seeing Emma's empty chair at the dinner table. The house became a tomb. The marriage became a ghost. Eventually, Sarah moved to Seattle to live with her sister. Bear stayed in Clearwater. He stayed in the shop. He stayed in the silence. The Iron Riders Motorcycle Club found him 3 years ago, or maybe he found them. A charity ride for children's hospitals. Bear showed up alone. He rode in formation with 7 other men. They did not ask about the tattoo on his arm. They did not offer sympathy. They just kept him in the pack and let the road do what roads do. They gave him miles. They gave him wind. They gave him brothers who understood that some pain could not be spoken. Now they were waiting for him in Helena, waiting for him to join the toy drive, waiting for him to hand presents to children who would remind him of the child he could not save. Bear picked up the phone. He almost called Axel back. His finger hovered over the number. Then he set the phone down. He grabbed his leather jacket from the hook. The Iron Rider's patch sat heavy across the back, a wolf's head surrounded by flames, beneath it the words that had become his creed. Ride together, stand together, bleed together. He locked the shop. He started his motorcycle. The engine roared to life, familiar, reliable. The only thing that never lied to him. He pointed the bike north toward Helena, not because he wanted to be around children and Christmas cheer, because staying still meant thinking. Thinking meant remembering. Remembering meant drowning. The highway stretched ahead, gray asphalt cutting through Montana wilderness, pine trees thick on both sides, mountains rising in the distance like sleeping giants. The sky looked heavy, clouds gathering low and dark. The weatherman said the storm would hold off until tomorrow night. Bear had been riding long enough to know weathermen lied almost as much as people did.
Ishara.
100 miles south, Eleanor Brennan sat at her kitchen table counting money that would not multiply, no matter how many times she recounted it. $127, three 20s, four 10s, two 5s, 17 ones. The coins barely made a sound when she poured them from the jar. Not enough for rent, not enough for formula, not enough for anything except maybe one more week of pretending everything would somehow work out. The eviction notice sat beside the money, heavy cream paper with bold black letters. 48 hours to vacate. The landlord had been patient. 8 months of missed payments. 8 months of promises. 8 months of a widow trying to hold together a family that kept threatening to fall apart. Ellie pressed her palms against her eyes. She would not cry, not where the children could hear. Roz had enough weight on her shoulders, 11 years old and already playing mother to her younger siblings. Declan watched everything with eyes that had gone quiet since his father died. The twins still laughed sometimes, but even their joy felt fragile. And Owen, 5 months old, too young to understand that his father would never hold him. Nathan Brennan had been a good man, strong, steady. He worked at the lumber mill doing maintenance on industrial saws, the kind of work that paid enough to keep a family fed, but not enough to save for emergencies. He kissed Ellie goodbye on a Tuesday morning in April. He told her he loved her. He drove to work. 3 hours later, the mill supervisor called to say there had been an accident, the saw blade malfunction. Safety guards that should have been replaced 6 months ago finally gave out. Nathan tried to hit the emergency stop. The machine was faster. It took his life before anyone could reach him. The mill sent condolences. They sent 3 months of salary. They sent a lawyer who explained that accepting the money meant signing away her right to sue. Ellie had no money for lawyers of her own. She signed, she buried her husband, she tried to survive. But surviving on 3 months of salary with 5 children meant choosing heat or groceries, medicine or electricity, rent or diapers. She chose the children every time. The bills piled up. The calls from collection agencies started. Then came the eviction notice. Ellie's phone buzzed. She grabbed it with hands that shook slightly. The screen showed her sister's name. Lillian, calling from Billings. Lily. Ellie, listen. The medical clinic where I work just posted an opening. Full-time receptionist position. Benefits, steady pay. I told the office manager about you. She wants to interview you. Ellie closed her eyes. When? Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. I know it's short notice, but they need someone fast. Ellie, this could save you. You and the kids can stay with me until you get your feet under you. We have room. It's not much, but it's safe. Tomorrow morning. I know the drive is 100 miles and you'd have to leave tonight, but the weather's supposed to hold until tomorrow evening. You can make it if you leave now. Ellie looked at the eviction notice. She looked at the $127. She looked at the doorway where Roz stood watching. Her eldest daughter's face showed the kind of careful hope that children learn when disappointment has become familiar. I'll be there, Ellie said. She hung up. She looked at Roz. Pack bags for everyone. Enough clothes for a week. Only the important things. We leave in 30 minutes. Roz did not ask questions. She disappeared down the hallway. Ellie heard her waking her siblings, soft voices, quick movements, a family that had learned to pack fast and travel light. Ellie walked to the window. The sky looked wrong. Too dark for 3 in the afternoon. The weather app on her phone showed clear skies through tomorrow evening. But the sky outside did not match the screen. The sky outside looked like something angry. Something waiting. She checked the gas gauge on the Honda Civic parked in the driveway. Half a tank, just enough to reach Billings if she drove carefully. The car was 15 years old. The check engine light had been on for 6 months. But it ran. Most of the time it ran. Ellie grabbed the emergency bag from the hall closet. 3 blankets, water bottles, first aid kit, granola bars, flashlight. She had been a nurse before Owen was born. She understood preparation. She understood risk assessment. Driving into uncertain weather with 5 children in an unreliable car was a calculated risk. But staying in Ridgewood meant certain eviction, meant the children going into foster care while she tried to find housing she could not afford. The odds favored driving. 20 minutes later, 5 children sat buckled in the Civic. Roz in the front passenger seat, Declan behind her, the twins in the back seat on either side of Owen's car seat. The baby slept bundled in 3 layers of blankets. Roz held a folded map. Declan stared out the window. The twins held hands. Ellie started the engine. It coughed twice before catching. She pulled out of the driveway. She did not look back at the house. Looking back made leaving harder. The highway stretched north. Empty. Gray. The trees on both sides stood bare and dark. Ellie kept her hands at 10 and 2. She watched the mile markers pass. She let herself believe this might work. The first 45 minutes were fine. The road stayed clear. The sky stayed heavy but not hostile. Ellie drove at exactly 55 miles per hour, saving well, keeping pace, making time. Then the sky broke open. Bear reached Helena at 3:30. The children's hospital parking lot was full of motorcycles. 20 bikes arranged in neat rows. The Iron Riders plus 2 other clubs that had joined for the event. Men in leather with patches across their backs. Warriors and mechanics and fathers. They unloaded bags of toys from saddlebags. Stuffed animals and board games and dolls and trucks. Inside the hospital, children's faces lit up. Sick kids in wheelchairs. Kids with IVs attached to rolling poles. Kids with bald heads and tired eyes. They forgot about treatments and surgeries when the bikers walked in. They forgot about pain when giant men with beards knelt down and handed them presents wrapped in shiny paper. Bear moved through it like a ghost. He smiled when children looked at him. He handed out toys with gentle hands. But inside his chest, something cold and heavy pulled him down. Every small face reminded him of Emma. Every laugh echoed hers. Every thank you sounded like her voice. He stepped outside before anyone could see him break. The cold December air hit his face. He breathed deep. The sky had changed. Clouds moved fast. The wind picked up. Snow would come soon, probably sooner than the weatherman predicted. Axel found him leaning against his bike. "You okay, brother?" Bear nodded. He did not trust his voice. "Tomorrow's the day," Axel said quietly. "I know. You planning to white-knuckle through it alone, or you want company?" Bear looked at the older man. Jerome Collier had been a combat medic in 2 wars. He had seen more death than most people could imagine, but his eyes still carried kindness. He had lost a son to cancer 7 years ago. He understood the weight Bear carried. "I'm fine," Bear said. "That's not what I asked." Bear checked his watch. 4:15. They had planned to stay in Helena overnight, hit the road tomorrow when the weather cleared. But tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow was 6 years. Tomorrow Bear would wake up to a calendar that marked the worst day of his life. "Let's ride out," Bear said. "Now, before the storm. Weather report says we've got till tomorrow night." "Weather report's wrong. Look at that sky." Axel studied the clouds. He had spent enough time in Montana to trust instinct over forecasts. "I'll tell the others. We move in 10. 8 motorcycles lined up in formation. Bear took point. Axel rode beside him. Behind them came Silas Drummond, the ex-sheriff they called Hawk. Then Winston Vale, Dalton Mercer, Magnus Thorne, and 2 others whose road names spoke to years of riding together. Ratchet, Piston, brothers bound by asphalt and trust. They pulled out of Helena at 4:30. The highway aimed south toward Clearwater, toward home, toward the empty house Bear avoided, and the calendar date he could not escape. The first flakes started falling at 5 o'clock. Ellie saw the snow begin, small flakes at first, gentle, almost pretty, then heavier, then sideways. The wind hit the Civic like a fist. The small car rocked. Ellie gripped the wheel tighter. "Mama," Roz's voice carried worry. "We're fine," Ellie said. "Storm came early. We'll slow down and take it careful." She reduced speed to 40, then 30, then 20. Visibility dropped. The white snow against the gray sky erased the world. The road disappeared beneath a blanket of white. The lines vanished. The shoulder vanished. Everything became white noise and screaming wind. The car began to shake. A grinding sound came from under the hood. Ellie's nursing training kicked in. She cataloged symptoms like a patient going into shock. Engine temperature rising, battery light flickering, loss of power. She pressed the gas pedal. The car did not respond. The grinding grew louder. Then all the dashboard lights came on at once. Red, yellow, orange, a Christmas tree of warnings. Then nothing. The engine died. The car went dark. Ellie pulled to what she hoped was the shoulder. The car rolled to a stop. She turned the key. Nothing. Turned it again. Nothing. The engine would not catch. The battery would not engage. The 15-year-old Civic had finally given up. She checked her phone. No signal. The storm had killed that too. She looked at the road behind them. Empty. She looked ahead. Empty. She looked at mile marker 47. They were 53 miles from Billings. Too far to walk. Too far to survive. Roz stared at her mother with eyes that asked questions Ellie could not answer. Declan's face had gone pale. The twins began to cry. Owen stirred in his car seat, starting to wake, starting to need things Ellie could not provide in a dead car in a blizzard. She made a decision. The decision she had made her entire life. Protect the children. Whatever it cost, whatever it took. Protect them. Everyone out. Bring the blankets. Mama, where are we going? Roz asked. There was a sign back there. Rest stop, 5 miles ahead. We can make it. It was a lie, not about the sign, about making it. 5 miles in a blizzard with 5 children meant death. But staying in the car meant death too. At least walking gave them a chance. At least moving meant fighting. Ellie wrapped Owen inside her jacket, skin to skin, her body heat the only thing keeping the 5-month-old alive. She zipped the jacket closed. She pulled a blanket over both of them like a cloak. Everyone hold hands. Make a chain. Roz, you lead with me. Declan behind her. Twins hold each other and hold Declan. Do not let go. Do not stop. If someone falls, we all stop and help them up. We stay together. You understand? 5 small voices said yes. They stepped into the storm. The cold hit them like a living thing, hungry, angry, looking for any opening to reach skin and steal warmth. Ellie bent forward into the wind. She pulled the children behind her. Each step took effort. Each breath hurt. The snow came sideways. It filled her eyes and mouth and nose. She could not see the road. She could only feel the pavement beneath her feet and trust it would lead somewhere safe. They walked for an hour, then 2. The rest stop did not appear. The sign had been wrong, or old, or lying. The 5 miles were really 10, or 12, or 20. Ellie did not know anymore. She only knew her legs were failing. Her strength was going. Owen had not moved against her chest in the last 5 minutes. She pressed her hand against his small body, feeling for the rise and fall of his breathing. There, barely, still alive, still fighting, but for how much longer? Roz pulled at her sleeve. Mama, we have to keep walking. Mama, please, oui. Ellie tried to answer. Her lips would not move. The cold had taken her voice. It had taken her strength. Now it was taking her hope. The twins cried without sound. Their tears froze on their cheeks before they could fall. Little crystals of fear trapped in ice. Declan stood behind them, his eyes empty. He had stopped shivering 10 minutes ago. Ellie knew what that meant. Hypothermia stage 2, the body shutting down, giving up, preparing to sleep forever. Her legs buckled. She fell to her knees. The chain of children collapsed around her. They pressed against her back, small bodies seeking warmth that was no longer there. This was how they would die, together, on a frozen Montana highway, 53 miles from salvation, 200 yards from an imaginary rest stop. The storm had won. Ellie pressed her face against Owen's tiny head. She whispered words he could not hear. I'm sorry. I tried. I'm so sorry. Roz's voice cut through the wind. Different now, not scared, confused. Mama, someone's coming. Ellie lifted her head. She saw nothing. White everywhere, white above and below and in every direction. White death swallowing everything. Then she heard it. Engines, low and heavy, getting closer. Headlights appeared through the storm. 2 beams, then 4, then 8. They moved slow, fighting through snow that wanted to stop everything. A convoy, motorcycles. Ellie's heart dropped. Bikers, on a mountain highway in a blizzard. She had heard stories. Dangerous men doing dangerous things, outlaws, criminals, people you avoided. But her children were dying. Owen might already be gone. She had no choices left. The lead motorcycle stopped 20 feet away. The engine idled, rumbling like caged thunder. A massive figure stepped off. He pulled off his helmet. The cold hit his face and he did not flinch. His beard filled with ice. His eyes found the woman, then the children, then the shape of the baby inside her jacket. Garrett Thornwood, Bear, riding home from Helena to escape memories, running from a calendar date that haunted him. He had been staring at the white void ahead, thinking about Emma, thinking about the drunk driver, thinking about the hand that went limp. Then Axel's lights flashed. A signal. Shapes on the roadside. Bear turned his head. Through the swirling snow, he saw them. A woman hunched forward. 5 small figures pressed against her. They were not moving, not walking, just standing, dying. He saw the eldest child's face. Brown hair whipping in wind, eyes wide with terror, trying to be brave, trying to hold on. She was 11, maybe 12. The same age Emma would be if she had lived. The same expression Emma wore when she looked at him through the shattered car window. Fear mixed with trust. Belief that Daddy would save her. Bear had failed Emma. The drunk driver was faster. Death was faster. He held her hand, and it was not enough. But this child, these children, they were dying right now, right in front of him. And he still had hands. He still had strength. He still had brothers behind him and motorcycles that could move when cars could not. Emma's voice echoed in his memory, the last thing she tried to say, her lips moving without sound. Bear had spent 6 years wondering what she wanted to tell him, wondering if it was, "I love you," or "I'm scared," or "Why didn't you save me?" Now he knew. She was telling him to look, to see, to stop, because 6 years later, children would need him. And this time he would not be too late. Bear's boots hit the snow. He walked toward them. The wind pushed against him. He pushed back. The other bikers watched from their seats. They knew his history. They knew what had happened to him. They knew what he had sworn after Emma died. Never again. Never stand by and watch a child suffer. Never arrive 4 minutes too late. Ellie watched the giant man approach. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Leather jacket, patches on his chest, a man built like something carved from stone. This was danger. This was threat. But her children were freezing. Her baby might already be dead. Running meant nothing. Surrender was the only option left. Bear stopped in front of her. He saw her fear. He saw the way her eyes moved from him to her children and back. He saw the moment she made a decision she hated, a decision forced by cold and snow and dying hope. He spoke 2 words, just 2. "I'm here." Ellie's legs gave out. Her body surrendered the fight it had been losing. She fell forward. Bear caught her, his massive arms wrapped around her and the baby both, holding them against his chest, against warmth, against life. He felt it. The baby moved, just barely, a tiny shift against his heart. Still alive, but barely. Bear looked back at his brothers. His face said everything. Time was gone. Options were gone. They had minutes, maybe less. Axel was already off his bike, trauma kit open, emergency blankets spreading silver across the white snow, chemical hand warmers cracking to life, everything that could fight the cold. Bear held Ellie with one arm. He reached for Owen with the other. The baby's lips were pale, too pale. Axel knelt beside them, pressed 2 fingers against Ellie's neck. Her pulse was there, weak but there. He reached inside her jacket, touched the baby's chest. The tiny heartbeat pushed back. "He's alive," Axel said, "but we don't have long." Hawk dismounted, then Ratchet, then Piston. They formed a wall around the family, their backs to the wind, their bodies blocking what wanted to kill these people. Roz stood 3 feet away, her siblings huddled behind her. The twins gripped each other's hands, tears frozen on their faces. Declan had stopped responding, his eyes unfocused, the cold taking him degree by degree. Roz looked at the big man called Bear. She should have been terrified. Bikers, strangers, men her mother taught her to avoid. But she saw something in his eyes, something broken, something kind, something that looked like her own fear reflected back. She decided to trust him. She had no other choice. Bear stared at the children. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total, including the baby. 5 children in a storm that wanted to kill them all. He looked at his brothers standing beside their motorcycles. 8 riders, 8 bikes. No cars, no walls, no shelter. The math did not work. You cannot carry children on motorcycles in a blizzard. The wind would rip them off. The cold would take them before they reached anywhere safe. They needed a vehicle. They needed walls and heat and time. They did not have time. Bear made a decision. He pointed at 2 riders. Push ahead, find shelter, gas station, farmhouse. Anything with walls, go now. 2 engines roared. They disappeared into white. Bear pointed at 2 more. Ride back, find any vehicle, truck, van, anything that can carry 6 people. Stop them however you have to. They went. 4 bikers remained, 4 motorcycles. 8 bodies against a storm that wanted everything. Axel wrapped an emergency blanket around Ellie, silver material crinkling as he tucked it tight. He activated hand warmers, placed them against her chest, near the baby, anywhere warmth could reach blood vessels close to skin. 30 minutes, Axel said quietly. Maybe less. Baby's too small, too cold. Bear nodded, his jaw tightened. 30 minutes in a storm, with no help coming. He turned and knelt in front of Roz. His knees sank into snow, his face level with hers. He did not speak right away. He just looked at her. This girl who was Emma's age, who had Emma's brave, frightened eyes. Roz looked back, her lips cracked from cold, her face red from wind, but standing, still watching over her siblings like a guard at the gates. What's your name? Bear asked. Rosalind. People call me Roz. Roz, I need your help. Can you keep your brothers and sisters calm while we get you somewhere safe? She nodded. No hesitation, no doubt. Something passed between them. A silent agreement. He would protect her family. She would help him do it. Bear stood. He looked at his brothers. They formed a circle around the children. Backs to wind, leather jackets becoming walls, bodies becoming shields. The wind shifted. Temperature dropped. Axel checked his watch, looked at Bear with an expression that needed no words. Time was running out. Bear looked down the road behind them. Empty, white, silent. No car, no trucks, no help. Just 8 bikers and 6 dying people in the middle of nowhere. The radio on Hawk's belt crackled. A voice pushed through static. One of the riders who went ahead. Found a motel. 3 miles up, mountain rest. Closed for season, but owner lives next door. We're waking him now. 3 miles. On motorcycles. With 5 children and an unconscious mother. Bear looked at the empty highway. No vehicles coming. The riders he sent back had found nothing. The road was dead. Everyone had taken shelter hours ago. It was motorcycles or nothing. He made the call. We carry them. 1 child per bike. Held tight. Moving together. No one argued. They understood. Staying meant death. Moving meant risk. But risk meant a chance. Bear lifted Roz carefully. She weighed almost nothing. He carried her to Axel's bike, set her on the seat behind the older man. Hold on tight, Bear said. Don't let go no matter what. Roz wrapped her arms around Axel's chest. The leather was cold against her cheek. But beneath the cold, she felt something solid. Something that would not let her fall. The other riders loaded children onto bikes. The twins rode with Hawk and Ratchet, pressed between them. Shared between 2 men who would die before they dropped a child. Declan went with Piston. The man locked the boy's arms around his waist, held them there with his own hands. Bear climbed onto his bike with Ellie still against his chest. Owen between them. He pulled his jacket closed around both of them, zipped it as far as it would go, mother and baby wrapped in leather and warmth, and a promise that Bear had failed once but would not fail again. He looked at his brothers. 8 riders, 5 children. 1 mother, 1 baby, 1 chance. Bear gave the signal. 8 engines roared to life. The sound cut through wind like thunder through silence. The convoy moved forward, 15 miles per hour. Any faster and tires would lose pavement. Any slower and cold would win. Into white darkness, into the unknown, into 3 miles that would feel like 300. Bear led with one hand on throttle, one arm locked around Ellie and Owen. His chest blocked wind from reaching them, his face took the full force of the storm. Ice formed in his beard, crystals gathered in his eyebrows. His eyes burned, but he did not blink. Blinking meant losing the road. Losing the road meant death. Behind him, Axel carried Roz. The girl's face pressed against his back, her small hands gripping his jacket with strength that came from somewhere deeper than muscle. Axel talked to her through the storm, his voice barely carrying over wind. My granddaughter's about your age. She likes hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. When we get to the motel, I bet they have some. You like hot chocolate? Roz did not answer, but her grip loosened slightly. She was listening. The other riders carried their small passengers. Winston Vale held the twins against him. Dalton Mercer gripped Declan with care that came from understanding exactly what he carried. Not just a body, a future, a life that deserved more than dying on a frozen highway. The 3 miles stretched into forever. 22 minutes of white death and screaming wind. 22 minutes of ice and fear and desperate prayer. Bear died 1,000 small deaths during those minutes. Every gust that pushed his bike toward invisible edges. Every patch of ice that made tires slip. Every second, Owen did not move against his chest. He prayed. Words he thought he had forgotten. Words from before Emma. Before the crash. Before God became someone who took daughters and left fathers alive to suffer. He did not pray for himself. He prayed for the children. For the mother he had never met. For the baby whose heartbeat he could barely feel through layers of blanket and jacket and fear. The motel appeared like a ghost. Faded sign reading Mountain Rest, with half the letters dark. Windows empty, parking lot buried. But one light glowed in a cabin next door. The riders who went ahead stood by an open door, waving arms, shouting through wind. They had done it, found shelter, found warmth, found a chance. Bear stopped his bike. His hands would not release the handlebars, fingers frozen around grips. He had to pry them loose one at a time. Muscle memory, the only thing keeping him upright. He lifted Ellie from the bike, carried her through the open door. Owen still pressed between them. Bear's legs shook. His body had given everything. The warmth inside hit his face like a fist. It hurt. Heat rushing back into frozen skin always hurts. He nearly fell. Axel appeared beside him, caught his arm. I've got you, brother. Bear carried Ellie to a couch near a heating vent, laid her down gently, positioned Owen on her chest where warmth could reach them both. Then he stepped back, let his body settle against the wall. The other bikers brought children inside. Roz walked on trembling legs. The twins came in carried by Hawk and Ratchet. Declan hung limp in Piston's arms, eyes half closed. An old man stood in the lobby, white hair, deep lines around his eyes. Harold Casper, motel owner. He watched bikers enter with a look mixing suspicion and confusion. Leather jackets, road-worn faces, the kind of men his wife always told him to avoid. Then he saw the children, blue lips, shaking bodies, eyes that barely stayed open. His suspicion died. Something else replaced it. Harold moved to the kitchen, started boiling water for hot packs, pulled blankets from a closet, threw them toward the couch. He stopped, looked at 5 children, looked at the unconscious mother, looked at 8 bikers standing like exhausted soldiers. Where's their father? The room went quiet. No one had an answer. Axel moved through the lobby with the efficiency of someone who had done this before. Military training taking over. He checked the twins first. Cold, but responsive. Fingers moving when he asked. No frostbite. They would survive. Roz sat on a chair edge, watching everything. Exhausted but alert. Present. She had held her family together long enough. Declan worried him. The boy sat in a corner, back against wall, eyes open but unfocused, skin pale gray. His core temperature had dropped too far. The cold had gone deep. Axel wrapped Declan in 3 blankets, positioned him near the heating vent, placed warm water bottles around his body. Not too hot, never too hot. Rewarming too fast could crash blood pressure. Axel had seen it in the field. He would not let it happen here. Owen lay on blankets near the radiator, colors slowly returning, pink replacing blue, breathing steady. shallow but steady. Bear knelt beside the couch where Ellie lay. He removed her wet outer layers, coat, sweater, everything holding cold against skin. Harold brought more blankets, hot water bottles. Bear arranged them around her body, under arms, against each sides, by her feet, slowly, carefully. Hypothermia victims needed warmth but gradual. Too much too fast could kill. Ellie's eyes fluttered, then opened. She saw a ceiling she did not recognize. Wooden beams, single light bulb, yellow walls stained with age. She saw faces she did not know. Large men with beards and leather. Panic flooded her chest. She tried to sit up. Her body screamed. Bear placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, pressed her back down. Your children are safe, all of them. They're right here, you're safe. Ellie's eyes searched his face. She did not know this man, did not know why she should trust him. But something in his expression made her stop fighting, something broken and honest. She let her body relax. Who are you? She whispered. My name is Garrett. People call me Bear. We found you on the road. Ellie closed her eyes. Memory came in pieces. The snow, the cold, her legs giving out. Sound of engines through wind. She opened her eyes again. My baby. Where's Owen? Bear pointed toward the radiator. Right there, he's warming up. He's going to be okay. Roz appeared at the couch edge, her face wet with tears she had held back for hours. They ran down her cheeks now, free, relief and exhaustion breaking through. Mama, she said, just that one word. All the fear packed into 2 syllables. Ellie reached for her daughter with arms that barely worked. Roz collapsed into the embrace. They held each other while the world continued around them. The twins came next, climbed onto the couch, pressed against their mother's sides. Freya buried her face in Ellie's neck. Iris wrapped small arms around Roz's back. Declan stayed at the room's edge, watching, his eyes still carrying that distant look. Harold hung up the phone. His face told the story before words did. Roads are closed. Ambulance can't move until morning. We're on our own tonight. Axel nodded. He had expected this. Whatever happened in the next few hours, wet bikers and one old motel owner were the only help this family would receive. Bear stepped back from the couch. He watched Ellie hold her children, saw relief on her face. Love. The fierce protective grip mothers never lose. He saw what he had lost 6 years ago. He saw what he had saved tonight. The 2 feelings crashed together inside his chest, pain and purpose mixing until he could not tell them apart. Ellie looked up at him. Her eyes found his across the room. Why, she asked, voice cracking. Why did you stop? Bear opened his mouth. No words came. The truth was too heavy. He stopped because he saw his daughter's face in Roz's eyes. He stopped because the universe gave him a chance to save what he could not save before. He stopped because failing again was not an option. The wind screamed against windows. Snow piled against the door. The storm had trapped them inside Mountain Rest Motel. No one was going anywhere until morning. Harold moved around his small kitchen, opened cans of vegetable soup, poured them into a dented pot. The stove clicked 3 times before flame caught. Within minutes, warm food smell filled the lobby. The children ate slowly, bodies forgetting how to process warmth, each spoonful taking effort. Freya held her bowl with both hands, letting heat seep into fingers. Iris watched her sister and did the same. Ellie sat on the couch with Owen in her arms. The baby was awake now, making small sounds, meaning hunger. Harold found powdered formula in a back closet, left by a guest years ago. Old but sealed, it would work. Ellie fed her son, watched the bikers as she did, her eyes moving from face to face, cautious, measuring. She had learned that kindness from strangers often came with a price. But these men asked for nothing. They did not stare. They did not crowd her. They simply moved around the room, checking on children, adjusting blankets, speaking to each other in quiet voices. Roz sat on the floor next to Axel. She pointed at patches on his jacket. What do those mean? Axel looked down at worn leather, traced one patch with his finger. This one means we ride together. This one's for a charity run we did last summer. Raised money for kids in foster care. Roz frowned. I thought bikers were dangerous. Axel smiled. It softened his whole face. Some are. We're not. We escort veterans to funerals. We deliver Christmas presents to group homes. We're not saints, but we try to do right by people who need help. Roz considered this, looked at her mother, back at Axel. My dad was a good man too. He died at work. Axel nodded, did not offer empty words. Just let her speak. Ellie started talking. Words came slowly, then faster. She told them about Nathan, about the machine that killed him, about the company that sent a sympathy card and 3 months' pay, about insurance claims still pending, about landlords knocking every week, about bills piling faster than she could pay. She told them about Lillian's phone call this morning, the Reichsbuch that would save them, the interview supposed to happen tomorrow, the car that was supposed to get them there. The bikers listened without interrupting, did not offer advice, did not tell her things would get better. They simply witnessed her pain. Sometimes that is what people need most, someone to hear them without trying to fix them. Bear sat apart from the group, leaned against wall near window, watching children through reflection in glass. Declan had finally moved. The boy was eating soup now, eyes more focused than before. The twins had fallen asleep against their mother, small chests rising and falling in steady rhythm. Owen was awake and fighting, tiny fists waving as Ellie fed him, life returning to bodies that had been so close to losing it. Roz kept glancing at Bear. She noticed things most children missed, saw the way he watched her family, saw sadness living behind his eyes, sadness that felt familiar. Harold crossed the room with 2 cups of coffee, handed one to Bear, stood beside him, looking out at Storm. 40 years I've owned this place, seen plenty of travelers in trouble, never seen a man carry a dying woman through a blizzard like that. Bear did not respond. Harold took a sip. You got kids? Bear's jaw tightened, eyes stayed fixed on window. I had a daughter. The word hung in air. Had, not have. Past tense. The heaviest word in the English language. Harold did not ask what happened, did not offer sympathy or platitudes. He simply placed his weathered hand on Bear's shoulder. She would be proud of you tonight. Something shifted inside Bear's chest, not breaking, more like a bone that healed wrong finally setting straight. Pain still there, would always be there, but different now. He did not cry, did not speak. But for the first time in 6 years, he did not feel like a ghost walking through a life that no longer belonged to him. He felt like a father, even if only for tonight. The motel lobby held its breath through long hours of darkness. Outside, the storm continued assault on windows. Inside, the fire in the old wood stove crackled, pushed warmth into every corner. The bikers took shifts without being asked. 2 stayed awake at all times, watched children, monitored storm, fed logs into stove, kept heat steady. They were used to long rides through darkness, fighting exhaustion while miles stretched ahead. This was no different, just a different kind of road. Ellie drifted in and out of restless dreams. Nightmares found her every time she closed eyes. Saw Nathan falling, heard the machine that killed him, felt cold wrapping around her children on the road, stealing warmth breath by breath. Each time she jerked awake, gasping, she saw Bear sitting in chair across room, eyes open, body still, watching over her family the way a guard dog watches sleeping children. Not threatening, not intrusive, just present. Ellie closed her eyes again. For the first time in 8 months, she felt something forgotten. She felt protected. Roz could not sleep, body exhausted, but mind would not stop. She wrapped a blanket around shoulders, walked across room to where Bear sat, settled into chair beside him without asking permission. Bear glanced at her but said nothing. They sat together in quiet, watching snow fall past window. Who was Emma? Roz asked. The question came before she could stop it. She did not know why she asked, just knew the question needed asking. Bear's hands tightened on chair arms. Silence stretched long enough that Roz thought he would not answer. My daughter, he said finally, voice low, rough. She died 6 years ago, Christmas Eve. Roz waited. Bear spoke slowly, like pulling splinters from old wounds. He told her about Emma's laugh, high and bright, like bells. He told her about Emma's favorite color, purple. Everything had to be purple. Her room, her clothes, her bicycle. He told her how Emma rode on his shoulders at parades, small hands gripping his forehead, voice shouting at everything she saw. He told her about the night a drunk driver crossed the median, about sound of metal on metal, about holding Emma's hand while light left her eyes. He told her about years since, silence in the house, marriage that could not survive weight of grief, road that became his only home. Roz listened without interrupting. When Bear finished, she spoke. My dad used to dance with my mom in the kitchen every Sunday morning. He would turn on radio and spin her around until she laughed so hard she couldn't breathe. Bear looked at her. He told the best bedtime stories, made them up himself every night a new adventure. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. Last thing he said before work that day was, be good for your mama, little boss. He called me little boss because I always told everyone what to do. Bear nodded slowly. He sounds like a good man. He was. They sat together in quiet. Two people who had visited places they never wanted to go. Two travelers comparing maps to the same dark country. A small sound made them both turn. Declan stood a few feet away, blanket wrapped around the thin shoulders, eyes clearer now. Fog of hypothermia lifted. I thought we were going to do, he said, voice barely above whisper. Bear looked at the boy. Were you scared? Declan nodded. Being scared means you understood the danger. Being brave means you kept going anyway. You were very brave, son. The word hung between them. Son, Bear did not know why he said it, but Declan did not look away. Something passed in that moment, thread connecting two people who had never met before tonight. Declan walked back to couch, lay down beside his mother, head resting against her arm. Within minutes, breathing slowed into sleep. Bear turned back to window. Snow was falling lighter now. Wind had lost some fury. Sky in the east carried faintest hint of gray. Morning was coming. The radio on Harold's desk crackled to life. Old man crossed room, picked up handset. Voice came through scratchy but clear. County Sheriff. Roads were opening. Ambulance was on the way. Help was coming. Ellie stirred on couch, eyes open. She heard the news and sat up slowly. Owen still cradled against chest. She looked around room at men in leather who had saved her family. She looked at Bear sitting by window, watching storm finally break. Help was already here. It had arrived on motorcycles through the worst storm in 20 years, and it looked nothing like she ever expected. The sun rose over Montana at 6:47 in the morning. Storm had finally surrendered. Sky stretched endless and blue above a world buried in white. 3 feet of snow covered everything. Violence of the night lay hidden beneath blanket of silence. Bear stood in motel parking lot watching light spread across mountains. He had not slept. His body ached in places he had forgotten existed, but his eyes were clear, his mind quiet for first time in years. At 7:14, ambulance appeared on freshly plowed road. Moved slowly, carefully, driver picking path through drifts. Red and white lights flashed against snow as it pulled into lot. Two paramedics stepped out, man and woman, both young. Both alert despite what must have been long night of storm calls. They entered motel and began checking children. Declan first, then twins, then Roz. Each child received careful examination, blood pressure, temperature, reflexes, questions about pain, about numbness, about memory. Core temps are normal, the male paramedic said. Sounded surprised. He should have been. Family stranded in blizzard for hours should not walk away whole. Owen needed observation at hospital. Small body had fought hard, but doctors would want to monitor him 24 hours. Ellie was weak but coherent. She answered questions with tired patience of a mother who had been through worse than exhaustion. Paramedics worked efficiently, wrapped children in heated blankets, started IV for Ellie, prepared stretchers for transport. Then they walked outside and saw the bikers. 8 men in leather stood in parking lot, exhausted, covered in dried snow, beards crusted with ice not fully melted. They looked like ghosts from a story nobody believed anymore. Female paramedic hesitated. Male paramedic's hand moved toward radio on belt. Instinct, not reason. Same instinct making people lock doors when motorcycles rumbled past. Harold stepped forward before call could be made. Those men saved that family. They found them on the road, carried children through storm on their bikes, kept them allowed on all night. Paramedics looked at bikers again. Suspicion did not disappear immediately. It faded slowly, like ice melting under morning sun. Something else took its place. Respect, gratitude, quiet shame at assumptions made too quickly. Male paramedic lowered hand from radio. Ellie was loaded into ambulance on stretcher. Children climbed in around her, twins pressing against sides. Declan sitting at feet. Owen in portable incubator. Wires monitoring heartbeat. Before doors closed, Ellie raised her head. Eyes found Bear across parking lot. He stood apart from others, watching. Waiting, she did not know what to say. Thank you was not enough. No words were enough for what he had done. What all of them had done. She simply held his gaze and nodded. One slow movement of head. Conversation without words. Debt that could never be repaid, but did not need to be. Bear nodded back. Ambulance doors closed. Engine started. Vehicle pulled away towards hospital and Billings. Sheriff's cruiser pulled in as the ambulance pulled out. Door opened. Weathered man in tan uniform stepped into snow. Sheriff Brant Hollis, 40 years in law enforcement, learned to be suspicious of anyone looking like trouble. Iron Riders looked like trouble. He walked toward them with hand resting casually near belt. Not on weapon, just near. Ready. Harold intercepted halfway across lot. Old motel owner spoke quickly, hands moving as he told story again. Stranded family, bikers who stopped, ride through blizzard, night of watching over children who should have died. Sheriff's expression changed as he listened. Suspicion drained from face. Something else replaced it. He walked to Bear, extended hand. I owe you an apology. I had you figured wrong. Bear shook offered hand. Most people do. Did not say it with bitterness, said it with acceptance of man who stopped caring what strangers thought long time ago. What mattered was children were alive. Everything else was noise. Bikers began preparing to leave. Engines checked, gear secured, routes discussed. Then small footsteps crunched through snow behind them. Roz had climbed out of ambulance. She ran across parking lot with blankets still wrapped around shoulders. Did not stop until she reached Bear. She threw arms around his waist, held on tight, face pressed against leather jacket, small body shaking with sobs she had been holding back since night before. Bear froze. Hands hung at sides for a moment. Then slowly he placed them on her back. Roz whispered something, words meant only for him. Then she pulled away, wiped eyes with back of hand, ran back to ambulance without looking back. Bear stood motionless in snow. Other bikers watched him. No one spoke. Roz's words echoed in his mind. You're somebody's angel today. The ambulance pulled away. Red lights fading into distance, taking 6 lives toward futures they almost did not have. Bear stood watching until he could not see them anymore. Axel appeared beside him. You okay, brother? Bear did not answer right away. He looked at the mountains, at the highway where they found a dying family, at the sky that had finally stopped trying to kill everything. Yeah, he said quietly. I think maybe I am. They mounted their bikes. 8 engines roared. The Iron Riders pulled out of Mountain Rest Motel, heading south toward Clearwater, toward home. Bear led the formation, but something had changed. He was not running anymore. Not from Emma's memory, not from Christmas Eve, not from the calendar date that marked worst day of his life. He was riding towards something now, toward understanding, toward purpose, toward the knowledge that maybe his daughter's death had not been meaningless. Maybe he survived so that 6 years later he could be on that exact highway at that exact moment. Maybe Emma's last gift to him was showing him how to save someone else's child. The sun climbed higher. The snow sparkled like diamonds. Montana stretched endless in every direction. Beautiful and brutal and honest. Bear rode through it with peace he had not felt in 6 years. Not happiness. Peace. The quiet acceptance that sometimes the worst moments of our lives prepare us for the best moments of someone else's. He had failed Emma. He would carry that forever. But last night he did not fail. Last night he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. And somewhere beyond the mountains and the sky and the endless blue above, Bear believed his daughter was watching. Finally proud, finally at peace, finally understanding that her father's broken heart had become someone else's salvation. The convoy disappeared down the highway, 8 dark shapes against white landscape, heading home, heading toward whatever came next. Together, always together, because that is what brothers do. They ride into storms, they stop for strangers, they carry the broken until they can walk again. And when the night is over and the dawn breaks clean and new, they do not ask for thanks or recognition or anything except the quiet knowledge that they did what needed doing. They showed up, they stayed, they saved lives, and in saving others, they saved themselves. The photograph appeared on the front page of the Clearwater Herald 3 days after the storm. Black and white, sharp focus, a moment frozen in time more permanent than any blizzard. Bear stood in the center, his massive frame surrounded by 6 people whose faces told a story no headline could capture. Ellie with Owen pressed against her chest, Roz's hand resting on Bear's arm, the twins leaning into their mother, Declan standing close but separate. All of them alive because 8 men on motorcycles refused to look away. The caption read simple and clean. Strangers become family, Iron Riders save 6 in mountain blizzard. By Thursday morning, the regional papers had picked it up. By Friday, a television station in Helena sent a crew to Bear's shop. He said no to the cameras, said no 3 more times after that. But the story did not need his permission to spread. Social media found the photograph over the weekend. Someone posted it with a caption about judging books by covers. Someone else shared it with a message about strangers who step up when no one expects them to. Within a week, the image had traveled across state lines, across time zones, into living rooms and office break rooms, in late-night scrolling sessions of people who needed to believe good still existed somewhere. The comments piled up in languages Bear could not read, but the sentiment translated universal. Heroes wear leather. Angels ride motorcycles. Never assume you know someone's heart by looking at their jacket. Letters started arriving at the Iron Riders clubhouse on Tuesday of the second week. Envelopes with stamps from states Bear had never visited. Handwritten notes from parents saying their children looked at bikers differently now. Typed emails forwarded through the club's website from teachers asking if the Iron Riders would speak at schools about community and compassion and showing up when it matters. Other motorcycle clubs reached out, sharing their own rescue stories, their own quiet acts that never made papers, asking how they could do more, how they could be seen as protectors instead of threats. The Iron Riders had cracked something open, a door that had been locked for decades. Now light was pouring through. A children's hospital in Missoula sent an invitation. They wanted the Iron Riders to lead their annual charity ride. The event coordinator wrote that the story had inspired 4 other clubs to join. The ride would be the biggest in the hospital's history. Bear sat in his office staring at the stack of messages on his desk. He did not know what to do with any of it. He had not done this for recognition, had not stopped on that highway to become someone's symbol. He stopped because a little girl's face looked like his daughter's, and his body moved before his brain could tell him all the reasons not to. Axel found him there after closing time, pulled up a chair and looked at the pile. "You going to answer those?" Axel asked. Bear shook his head. "I didn't do it for this." "I know, none of us did." Axel leaned forward. "But think about what happens if you embrace it. Not for you, for the message. For every kid who might get saved because someone saw this story and decided to stop instead of driving past." Bear said nothing. He stared at the photograph on top of the pile. His own face looked back at him, surrounded by children he had known for one night and would now know forever. "For Emma," Axel said quietly. Bear closed his eyes. When he opened them, he reached for the first letter. Mo. 100 miles north in Billings, Eleanor Brennan stood at the window of her sister's house, watching the children play in the backyard. The snow had mostly melted. Patches of brown grass showed through like promises that spring would eventually come. Lillian's house was small but warm. 2 bedrooms upstairs for the kids, a fold-out couch for Ellie until they could find their own place. More than she had hoped for. More than enough, everything. The job interview had been rescheduled for Monday morning. Ellie arrived with bags under her eyes and a story she did not tell. She got the position. Medical receptionist, full-time hours, benefits that would cover the children, a paycheck that would not run out before the month did. The children started new schools the following week. Freya and Iris walked into their kindergarten classroom holding hands, matching backpacks bouncing with every step. Their teacher knelt down and welcomed them with the kind of gentle voice that understood new beginnings were hard. Declan found a seat in the back of his fourth grade class, did not speak for 3 days. Then a boy named Marcus asked him about the scar on his hand from the cold. Declan told him the truth, about the storm, about the bikers, about the night he thought would be his last. By Friday, he had 2 friends and a reputation for being the kid who survived a blizzard. Roz adapted fastest, 11 years old enough to understand what they had escaped, old enough to appreciate what they had gained. She helped Ellie unpack boxes. She read bedtime stories to the twins. She watched over her family the same way she had on that frozen road. Owen was healthy, loud, demanding food at all hours. The doctors had kept him under observation for 48 hours after the rescue. His tiny body recovered faster than anyone expected. He was a fighter. He came from fighters. But Ellie could not stop thinking about the bikers. She did not know most of their names. The chaos of that night had swallowed all normal rituals of introduction. She remembered faces. She remembered voices. She remembered leather and patches and the way they stood in a circle to block wind. Iron Riders. She remembered those words sewn across their backs. She found them online late one night after the children were asleep. A motorcycle club based in Clearwater. Their website showed photos of charity rides and community events. Men in leather handing out presents at Christmas. Veterans escorted to funerals with honor guards of rumbling motorcycles. Ellie stared at the screen for a long time. Then she started writing. The letter arrived at Bear's repair shop on a Tuesday afternoon. White envelope with neat handwriting on front. No return address. Just a name, Eleanor Brennan. Bear read it 3 times. She thanked him for saving her family. She told him what had happened after. The job, the house, the children adjusting to their new life. She told him the kids asked about the motorcycle men every night before bed. She told him Roz had started writing a story about bikers who saved families in snowstorms. The hero in her story was a giant man with a beard who carried a mother and baby through darkness. Ellie asked if she could visit. She wanted to thank them properly. She wanted the children to see their rescuers in daylight without fear and cold and desperation. Bear set the letter on his workbench. He did not know how to respond. He was not used to gratitude. He was used to suspicion, to fear, to people crossing streets when they saw him coming. He was used to being the monster in someone else's story, not the hero. He showed the letter to Axel that evening. The big man read it slowly, lips moving slightly with words. When he finished, he smiled. "You know what you have to do, brother." Bear wrote back the next morning. His handwriting was rough, letters uneven. He was not a man comfortable with words on paper, but he found the ones that mattered. He invited Ellie and the children to the Iron Riders Clubhouse for their annual spring cookout, a family event where the club hosted children from foster homes and struggling families. It was their biggest charity event of the year. It was also 6 weeks after the anniversary of Emma's death. Bear had avoided the spring cookout for 6 years. Every April, he found reasons to be somewhere else. Too much work at the shop, a ride that needed to happen, anything to escape the laughter of children on a day that felt like mourning. This year would be different. Ellie accepted the invitation immediately. She packed the children into a rental car, a reliable one with full tank and recently inspected engine. They made the drive to Clearwater on a Saturday morning in late April. The weather was warm. The roads were clear. The world felt safe in a way it had not felt for a long time. The clubhouse appeared at the end of a gravel road, a converted barn surrounded by motorcycles and picnic tables and families laughing in afternoon sun. Banners hung from the rafters. Music played from speakers mounted on barn walls. The smell of grilling meat filled the air. Roz spotted Bear across the parking lot. She did not hesitate, did not wait for permission. She ran. Bear saw her coming, brown hair bouncing with every step, arms pumping at sides, face split into a smile that reached all the way to her eyes. She crashed into him with the force of a child who believed he was family. Bear wrapped his arms around her. He closed his eyes. For one moment, just one, he felt something he had not felt in 6 years. He felt like his daughter was still alive somewhere, watching, proud of the man he had become without her. Children ran across grass in every direction. Foster kids chased each other around picnic tables. Neighbors' kids climbed on hay bales stacked near the barn. Bikers' grandchildren sat on shoulders demanding to be carried higher. The Iron Riders clubhouse had transformed into something loud and alive and beautiful. Smoke rose from 3 grills lined up near the fence. Axel manned the center one. He wore an apron that read "Kiss the Cook" over his leather vest. When he saw Roz approaching, he grinned. "You ready to learn the family business?" he asked. Roz nodded eagerly. Axel tied an apron around her waist, 3 sizes too big, had to wrap it twice. He handed her a spatula and showed her how to flip burgers without losing them to flames. "Not too fast," Axel said. "Let it tell you when it's ready." Roz concentrated with intensity of a surgeon, tongue poking out corner of mouth. She flipped a burger perfectly. It landed with satisfying sizzle. "Natural," Axel said. "You're a natural." Roz beamed. Across the yard, Declan sat on a parked motorcycle. Silas Drummond stood beside him explaining the controls. Declan's hands gripped handlebars, his eyes wide. He was not riding, just sitting. But his face said he felt like the most powerful person in the world. The twins had found their way to the face painting station. A massive biker named Travis sat on a folding chair with a palette of colors in his lap. He was 6'4" with arms like tree trunks and a beard that reached his chest. But surrounded by glitter and butterfly stamps, he looked like the gentlest man on earth. Freya pointed at her cheek. "A flower." Iris pointed at hers. "A dragon." Travis nodded seriously at both requests. His brush moved with surprising delicacy across their small faces. Owen made a sound of protest as a grandmother from the neighborhood lifted him from Ellie's arms. "This baby needs more food," the woman announced. She carried him toward the buffet table before Ellie could respond. Another grandmother intercepted them. "He needs fresh air first. Too hot by the grills." They negotiated Owen's care like diplomats dividing territory. Ellie let them. She had not been surrounded by community like this since before Nathan died. Bear appeared beside her table. He lowered himself onto the bench across from her. His leather jacket was gone, replaced by plain flannel shirt. He looked different in daylight, softer, still massive, still scarred by roads and years, but softer. "Thank you for coming," he said. Ellie shook her head. "Thank you for inviting us. The kids haven't stopped talking about this for 2 weeks." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Around them, the cookout continued its cheerful noise. "Nathan loved events like this," Ellie said. "Community things. He always said family wasn't just blood. Family was anyone who showed up when you needed them." Bear nodded slowly. He was right. Ellie looked at him. "Tell me about Emma." The question could have hurt, should have hurt. But Bear found the words coming easier than expected. He told Ellie about Emma's first steps, about her obsession with butterflies, about the way she used to crawl into his bed during thunderstorms and fall asleep with her hand on his face. He told her about the night she died. Not all of it, just enough. The lights, the sound, the weight of her hand going still. Ellie listened without interrupting. When he finished, she placed her hand on his across the table. "She would be proud of you," Ellie said, "for what you did that night, for what you do every day." A sheriff's cruiser pulled into the gravel lot. Brant Hollis stepped out dressed in civilian clothes, jeans and a plaid shirt, off-duty but still carrying himself like a man who spent 40 years enforcing laws. He walked toward the cookout with an envelope in one hand, reached Bear's table and extended it. "Donation for your foster program. County kicked in extra this year." Bear took it without looking inside. "Appreciate it." Hollis hesitated. "Can I say something?" Bear nodded. "I had you boys figured wrong for a long time. A lot of us did. What you did out there in that storm, that changed minds, changed how people see the patch on your back." He paused. "Changed how I do my job. Been telling my deputies all month. Don't judge the jacket, judge the actions." Bear stood and shook the sheriff's hand. No words needed. The gesture said enough. The afternoon stretched into evening. The sun dropped lower. Golden light slanted across the grass. Children's laughter mixed with adult conversation and the occasional bark from dogs who had no idea what was happening but wanted to be part of it. Roz found Bear near the barn. She was holding a disposable camera. The kind with actual film, old-fashioned, reliable. "Can we take a picture?" she asked. "All of us together." So I never forget. Bear started to refuse. Then he saw her face. Hopeful, earnest. The same expression Emma used to wear when she asked for one more bedtime story. One more push on the swing, one more minute before lights out. He could not say no. "All right," Roz called to her family. They came from different directions. Ellie with Owen, Declan with grease on his hands from examining motorcycle engines, the twins with half-finished face paint drying on cheeks. They gathered together. Ellie and her 5 children. Bear standing behind them, his hands resting on Roz and Declan's shoulders. Axel stood beside Bear, then Hawk, then the others. 8 bikers who stopped when they could have kept riding. A neighbor took the photo. The flash captured the moment. A widow and her kids. Bikers who saved them. A community that came together when the world tried to tear them apart. That photograph would end up in frames, in wallets, on refrigerators held by magnets shaped like Montana. It would become the image people saw when they thought about the night 6 lives almost ended on a frozen highway. When they thought about the men who refused to let that happen. But standing there in the golden light of late April, none of them knew that yet. They only knew they were alive. They were together. They were family in the way that mattered most. By choice, by action, by showing up. The weeks that followed brought changes none of them expected. The photograph from the cookout made its way online. Someone posted it with the caption, "One year later, the family that bikers saved." The comments section exploded. Thousands of shares, hundreds of thousands of views. The story had not died after the initial news cycle. It had been waiting, sleeping, ready to wake up and spread further. News outlets started calling again. This time they wanted the whole family, wanted to interview Ellie and the children, wanted to know how their lives had changed, what it felt like to be saved by strangers, what message they had for people who still judged bikers by their appearance. Ellie said yes to one interview. Local television, short segment. She sat on a couch with Roz beside her, Owen in her lap. The interviewer was kind, asked gentle questions, let Ellie speak without interrupting. "What do you want people to know about that night?" the interviewer asked. Ellie thought for a moment, then looked directly at the camera. "I want them to know that the men who saved us didn't have to stop. They were cold, they were tired, they were heading home. But they saw people in trouble and they stopped. That's not about being a biker. That's about being human. That's about choosing to help when help is needed." She paused. "And I want people to know that we're not victims. We're survivors. My children are strong because they come from strength. We lost Nathan. We lost our home. We almost lost our lives, but we didn't. We're here. We're building something new. And we're grateful to everyone who helped us do that." The segment aired on a Thursday night. By Friday morning, it had been picked up by national networks. By Saturday, it was trending on 3 social media platforms. By Sunday morning, Ellie's phone would not stop ringing. But on that Thursday night, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, Ellie sat at Lillian's kitchen table with her sister and cried. Not from sadness, from relief, from the release of 8 months of tension, from the knowledge that they had made it. They had survived. They were going to be okay. Lillian held her sister's hand and did not say anything. Sometimes the best comfort is presence, just sitting with someone while they let go of the weight they have been carrying alone. In Clearwater, Bear watched the interview on the small television in his shop. He sat on a stool surrounded by engine parts and tools. The screen glowed in the dark space. When Ellie spoke about choosing to help, Bear felt something shift. She was right. It was not about the leather jacket or the motorcycle or the patches that scared people. It was about the choice, the decision to stop, to see someone suffering and refuse to look away. That choice had saved 6 lives, but it had also saved Bear. He just had not realized it until now. For 6 years he had been running, from grief, from guilt, from the belief that he did not deserve to be happy because Emma would never be happy again. He had been punishing himself for surviving, for being on the motorcycle instead of in the car, for holding her hand while she died instead of dying with her. But stopping on that highway changed something. Carrying those children through the storm changed something. Watching them survive when they should have died changed something. Bear finally understood what Emma had been trying to tell him with her last look. She had not been asking why he did not save her. She had been telling him to keep living, to keep going, to be there for the next person who needed him. His daughter's death was not meaningless. It had prepared him for that exact moment on that exact highway. It had given him the urgency to stop when other people might have kept driving. The desperation to save when saving seemed impossible. Emma's last gift to him was purpose, and he had finally learned how to accept it. Summer arrived in Montana with long days and warm winds. The Iron Riders stayed busy. More charity rides than ever before. More requests from schools and community centers. More invitations to speak about their mission, about what it meant to serve without seeking recognition, to help without expecting anything in return. Bear found himself at a middle school in Helena on a Tuesday afternoon, standing in front of 200 students packed into an auditorium. He had never been comfortable with public speaking, preferred engines to words, metal to conversation. But when the principal asked if he would talk about that night in December, Bear said yes. He stood at the podium looking at young faces, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, Emma's age, the age she would be if the drunk driver had stayed in his lane. "I'm not going to tell you I'm a hero," Bear started, his voice rough but steady. "Heroes are people who run into burning buildings, who take bullets for strangers, who sacrifice everything for the greater good. I'm not that. I'm just someone who was in the right place at the right time, who saw people in trouble and had the ability to help." He paused. "But here's what I want you to understand. Every single one of you will have moments in your life when you see someone suffering, someone being bullied, someone sitting alone, someone who needs help but is too afraid to ask for it. In those moments, you get to choose. You can look away. You can tell yourself it's not your problem. You can keep walking." Another pause. "Or you can stop. You can be the person who shows up, who reaches out, who refuses to let someone suffer alone." He looked across the auditorium. "That choice is more powerful than you know. That choice can save lives, can change futures, can remind people that good still exists in this world." The room was silent. Bear was not used to silence that felt like listening. 6 people are alive today because 8 men on motorcycles made that choice. We're not special. We just stopped. That's all any of us can do. Stop. See? Help. The rest takes care of itself. He stepped back from the podium. The auditorium erupted in applause. Students stood. Teachers stood. The principal wiped her eyes. Bear walked off the stage feeling lighter than he had in years. Axel met him in the hallway. "That was good, brother. Really good." Bear shook his head. "Just said what needed saying. That's what makes it good." They walked out to their motorcycles. The school day was ending. Kids poured out of doors, laughing, shouting, living their lives with the careless joy of people who did not yet understand how fragile everything was. Bear watched them. He used to hate that joy. It reminded him of what Emma lost, what he lost. But now he saw it differently. That joy was what he had been protecting on that frozen highway. That was what he had saved. Life, messy and loud and imperfect and beautiful. Life that deserved to continue. Fall arrived with golden leaves and cooling air. Ellie had been working at the medical clinic for 8 months. She was good at her job. Patients liked her. Doctors trusted her. She had started taking night classes to renew her nursing license. 2 years and she would be back to the work she loved, back to healing people instead of just checking them in. The children were thriving. Roz was in 7th grade now. Straight A student, member of the school safety committee. She had started a program teaching younger kids about emergency preparedness, what to do if you get lost, how to signal for help, why you should never give up even when you are scared. The program started with 8 kids in a classroom. By October, it had spread to 3 schools. The local news did a story about it, called Roz the girl who survived. She hated the title. She was not defined by one night in a storm. She was defined by what she chose to do after. Declan was in 5th grade, still quiet, but less haunted. He had joined the school's robotics club, spent his afternoons building machines that could solve problems. He was good with his hands, good at seeing how pieces fit together. Bear had offered to teach him motorcycle mechanics. Declan had said yes immediately. Every other Saturday, Declan took the bus to Clearwater, spent the day at Bear's shop, learning about engines and gears and the satisfaction of fixing something broken. They did not talk much, did not need to. The work said everything that needed saying. The twins were 7 now, growing fast. Their kindergarten teacher said they were inseparable, always holding hands, always watching out for each other. They had started taking karate lessons, tiny warriors learning to be strong. Owen was almost 2, walking, talking, getting into everything. He called Bear Uncle B, did not remember the night he almost died, would never remember. But he wore a tiny leather vest that Axel had made for him, with a patch that read, Junior Iron Rider. Ellie visited Clearwater once a month, sometimes more. She and Bear had become friends, the kind of friendship built on shared trauma and mutual respect. They did not talk about the storm often, did not need to relive it, but its shadow connected them, bound them, reminded them both that life could change in an instant, that strangers could become family, that hope existed even in the darkest moments. December arrived again, 1 year since the night that changed everything. The Iron Riders organized a memorial ride, not for someone who died, for people who lived. For the moment when 8 men decided to stop instead of driving past, they invited Ellie and the children, invited the sheriff, invited Harold from the motel, invited the paramedics who had shown up that morning, invited everyone who had been part of the story. 200 motorcycles showed up, Iron Riders and guest clubs from 4 states. They rode in formation from Clearwater to Ridgewood Pass, to mile marker 47, where an old Honda Civic had died in the snow. Someone had placed a small memorial there, a stone marker with a simple inscription, where strangers became family. December 19th, 2024. The convoy stopped. Engines went silent. 200 people stood in the cold December air. No snow this year, clear skies, bright sun, as if the weather itself was paying respects. Bear stood at the marker with Ellie beside him, her children around them. Roz held Owen. Declan stood close to Bear. The twins pressed against their mother's legs. No one gave speeches. No one needed to. They just stood together, remembering, honoring, grateful. After several minutes of silence, Roz stepped forward. She had written something, practiced it all week. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket and read aloud. 1 year ago today, my family was dying. We were cold. We were lost. We were out of time. Then strangers stopped. Men we had never met. Men we were taught to fear. They did not ask questions. They did not hesitate. They just helped. They saved us. Her voice wavered but held steady. I used to think heroes wore capes, carried shields, had superpowers. Now I know better. Heroes wear whatever they want. They look like anyone. They are anyone who chooses to stop, who chooses to help, who chooses to be there when being there is hard. She looked at Bear. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for being our hero. Thank you for showing me what courage really looks like. She folded the paper and stepped back. Ellie put her arm around her daughter. Bear wiped his eyes and did not try to hide it. The convoy remounted. Engines started. They rode to Clearwater together, to the clubhouse, to a celebration that lasted until after dark. That night, after everyone had gone home, Bear sat alone in the clubhouse looking at the photographs that covered the walls, pictures of rides and events and brothers who had become family. And there in the center, the photograph from the spring cookout, Ellie and her children. 8 bikers, most of them smiling, all of them alive. Bear raised a glass of water. He did not drink alcohol, had not since Emma died, did not trust himself with anything that might dull the edges of memory. But water worked fine for toasts. To Emma, he said to the empty room, you saved them through me. Thank you for that. Thank you for giving my life meaning again. He drank, set the glass down, sat in the silence of a place that had become his true home. Outside, the December wind blew cold, but inside, surrounded by photographs and memories and the knowledge that he had made a difference, Bear felt warm. He felt like a father again. Not to the daughter he lost, but to the children he saved, to the family that had adopted him without asking, to the legacy Emma left behind in the most unexpected way. Her death had taught him the fragility of life, but that night on the highway taught him something else. That fragility made every moment sacred, made every choice matter, made every decision to stop instead of passing by an act of defiance against a world that took too much too soon. Bear turned off the lights, locked the clubhouse, started his motorcycle. The engine rumbled to life, familiar, reliable, honest. He rode home through the cold December night, not running from anything, not chasing anything, just riding, present, alive, at peace with the man he had become, the man Emma would be proud of, the man who stopped when it mattered most. And that was enough. That was everything. The Frozen Road to Redemption. Part 3. 4 years moved like water, slow then fast, changing everything while seeming to change nothing at all. Montana seasons turned their familiar wheel. Winters brutal and beautiful. Springs full of mud and promise. Summers that burned bright and brief. Falls that painted the mountains gold before stripping them bare again. The Iron Riders kept riding, kept showing up, kept being the men they had always been. But now the world saw them differently, saw the patches on their backs as symbols of protection instead of threat, saw the leather and beards as marks of character instead of danger. Bear turned 71 in the spring of 2029. His body showed the years, knees that ached in cold weather, hands that stiffened on winter mornings. Gray in his beard had turned to white, but his eyes were clear, his grip was strong, his heart was lighter than it had been in a decade. The repair shop stayed busy, more work than he could handle alone. He had hired help, a young kid named Travis fresh out of technical school. Good with his hands, better with engines, reminded Bear of himself at 25, hungry to learn, willing to work, respectful of the craft. But the best part of Bear's week came every other Saturday. When Declan Brennan stepped off the bus from Billings with a backpack full of tools and questions Bear was happy to answer. The boy was 14 now, taller than his mother, voice deeper, hands that knew their way around a motorcycle engine better than most men twice his age. He had Nathan's build, his father's quiet strength, but something of Bear had gotten in there too. The careful way he approached problems. The patience to let metal teach him instead of forcing solutions. They worked side by side in comfortable silence. Bear would point out a carburetor that needed adjusting. Declan would nod and get to work. No unnecessary words. Just the language of wrenches and understanding. On a Saturday in early June, Declan paused while reassembling a transmission. He wiped his hands on a rag, looked at Bear. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you ever think about that night, the storm?" Bear set down the part he was holding. "Every day. Does it get easier thinking about it?" "No, but it gets different. At first, all I could think about was how close you came to dying, how close I came to being too late. Now I think about how you lived, how all of you lived. That part gets easier." Declan nodded slowly, processing. "I think about my dad every day. Sometimes it hurts so bad I can't breathe. Other times I just feel empty. Like there's a hole where he used to be and nothing will ever fill it." Bear understood that hole, had lived with his own for years. "The hole doesn't fill," Bear said, "but you learn to walk around it. You learn to build your life around the shape of what's missing. And eventually the edges get less sharp. You can get close to it without bleeding." "Does that happen with your daughter, with Emma?" "Yeah, it took a long time, but yeah." They went back to work, but something had shifted, a deeper understanding settling between them. They were both builders now, both mechanics, both men who knew how to take broken things and make them work again. Roz turned 16 in August. She had grown into someone who commanded rooms without trying, not through loudness or force, through presence, through the quiet confidence of someone who had faced death at 11 and decided to spend the rest of her life making sure other kids did not have to face it alone. Her Junior Safety Scouts program had evolved into something larger. The Montana Youth Emergency Preparedness Initiative, a state-funded program that trained young people in wilderness survival, first aid, emergency response, and leadership. Roz had designed most of the curriculum herself, with help from Axel, who taught the medical components, from Hawk, who covered legal aspects and working with law enforcement, from Bear, who taught the most important lesson of all: never give up, even when you are scared. Even when you are cold, even when every part of you wants to stop fighting, you keep going because help might be one more step away, one more minute, one more breath. 500 kids had gone through the program in its first 3 years. 12 of them had used their training to save lives. A girl who performed CPR on her grandfather. A boy who stopped his friend from drowning. 3 kids who helped lost hikers find their way back to trails. 2 who recognized signs of hypothermia and got help before it was too late. Each story made its way back to Roz. Each one reminded her why the work mattered. Why that night in December 2024 had not been an ending. It had been a beginning. The state recognized her work with an award, the Governor's Youth Leadership Medal. The ceremony was scheduled for late June at the Capitol building in Helena. Roz could bring 10 guests. She knew exactly who she wanted there. She called Bear first. "I need you to be there," she said. No preamble, no small talk. Roz had never been one for unnecessary words. "I'll be there," Bear said without hesitation. "And bring the others. Axel and Hawk and all of them. You're the reason any of this exists. You should see what it became." Bear felt something catch in his throat. "We'll all be there. Wouldn't miss it." The day of the ceremony arrived bright and clear, the kind of June day that made Montana feel like the best place on earth. Warm sun, cool breeze, sky so blue it looked painted. 20 motorcycles rolled into Helena that morning, the Iron Riders in full formation. They parked in neat rows outside the Capitol building, drew stares from people in business suits and summer dresses. But the stares were different now, curious instead of fearful, respectful instead of suspicious. Inside the rotunda, 400 people gathered, families and teachers and government officials. Roz sat in the front row with her mother beside her. Owen sat on Ellie's lap, 8 years old now and barely able to sit still. Declan sat next to his mother. The twins flanked them on either side. Freya in a yellow dress, Iris in blue. They had insisted on different colors, wanted to be seen as individuals even though they still held hands. Bear and the Iron Riders filled 3 rows near the back. 8 men in leather vests over button-down shirts. Their compromise between showing respect for the venue and staying true to who they were. They would not hide their patches, would not pretend to be something they were not, but they could clean up, could show that bikers understood occasions that required pressed shirts and polished boots. The governor spoke first, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes. She talked about youth leadership, about the importance of preparing the next generation, about programs that made real differences in real lives. Then she called Roz to the podium. The teenager walked up with the same steady confidence she brought to everything. No nervousness, no false modesty. She knew what she had accomplished, knew what it meant. She accepted the medal with a firm handshake and a clear thank you. But when the governor stepped back and indicated Roz should say a few words, something shifted in the girl's expression. The confidence remained, but underneath it, Bear saw the 11-year-old who had stood in the snow trying to be brave while her family died around her. Roz gripping the podium, looked out at 400 faces, found Bear's in the back, held his gaze for a moment that felt longer than it was. Then she spoke. 4.5 years ago, my family was dying on a frozen Montana highway. We had been walking through a blizzard for hours. Our car broke down. We had no phone signal, no help coming. The cold was winning. My baby brother had stopped moving. My little brother had stopped shivering. My sisters were crying without sound. My mother's legs gave out. We were going to die there. All of us. Together. The rotunda went silent. Even Owen stopped fidgeting. Then I saw headlights through the snow. Motorcycles. 8 of them. The Iron Riders Motorcycle Club out of Clearwater. They found us. They stopped. They loaded us onto their bikes and rode 3 miles through white hell to get us to shelter. They saved our lives. Roz paused. Her voice was steady, but her hands gripped the podium white-knuckled. The man who led them is named Garrett Thornwood. People call him Bear. He lost his daughter 6 years before he found us. She died in a car accident on Christmas Eve. He was riding behind the car. He watched it happen. He held her hand while she died. For 6 years, he carried that pain, that guilt, that emptiness. Bear felt every eye in the room turned toward him. He kept his gaze on Roz. When Bear saw us on that road, he saw his daughter's face in mine. He saw a chance to save what he could not save before, and he took it. He and his brothers risked their lives to save strangers. They asked for nothing in return. They just helped because helping was the right thing to do. Roz's voice grew stronger. I started this program because of that night, because I learned that survival is not about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about refusing to give up. It's about knowing what to do when you are scared. It's about having the skills and the courage to keep fighting when fighting seems impossible. She looked directly at Bear again. But more than that, I started this program because Bear and his brothers taught me something I will never forget. They taught me that anyone can be someone's angel, that help comes in forms we do not expect, from people we are taught to fear, that the measure of a person is not what they look like or what they wear, it is what they do when someone needs them. The audience erupted in applause, but Roz was not finished. So this medal is not just mine. It belongs to Bear and Axel and Hawk and Winston and Dalton and Mags and every member of the Iron Riders. It belongs to my mother who kept us alive long enough for help to arrive. It belongs to Harold Casper, who opened his motel on the coldest night of the year. It belongs to every person who chooses to stop instead of driving past, who chooses to help instead of looking away. She held up the medal. This is what courage looks like, not a soldier in uniform, not a superhero with a cape, just ordinary people making extraordinary choices in moments that matter. The applause was deafening now. People stood, the governor stood, Ellie was crying, the twins were crying. Even Owen looked moved, though he probably did not fully understand why. Bear stood with his brothers. They did not cheer, did not clap, just stood in respect for a girl who had taken the worst night of her life and turned it into something that saved hundreds of other lives. Roz stepped down from the podium. She walked directly to Bear, stopped in front of him. The medal hung around her neck on a blue ribbon. She took it off, held it out to him. "This is yours." Bear shook his head. "No, you earned that. I earned it because you gave me the chance to. Take it, please." Bear looked at the medal, at the inscription. "For exceptional leadership in service to Montana's youth." He looked back at Roz. "How about we share it?" he said quietly. "You keep it, but know that every time you look at it, we're there too. All of us. Everyone who helped you become who you are." Roz nodded, put the medal back around her neck. Then she hugged him. Bear wrapped his arms around her. This girl who was Emma's age, who had survived when Emma did not, who had become the daughter he never got to watch grow up. "Thank you," Roz whispered, "for everything, for stopping, for believing in me, for showing me what a good man looks like." Bear's voice was rough when he answered, "You did that yourself. I just gave you a chance. You did everything else." The celebration afterward took place at a park near the Capitol. Picnic tables loaded with food, kids running across grass, adults standing in clusters talking about nothing and everything. The kind of gathering that felt like family even when half the people there had met for the first time an hour ago. Bear stood under a tree watching Declan teach Owen how to throw a football. The 8-year-old was terrible at it. The ball went everywhere except where he aimed. But Declan was patient, encouraging, the kind of older brother every kid deserved. Ellie found Bear there. She handed him a bottle of water, stood beside him in comfortable silence. "Quite a speech," Bear said after a while. "She's been working on it for weeks, wanted to get it right." She did. They watched the kids play, watched the families mingle, watched the Iron Riders surrounded by people asking questions about their club, about their work, about what it meant to be a biker in 2029. "I've been thinking about something," Ellie said. "About that night, about all the things that had to happen exactly right for us to survive. Yeah, if the storm had hit an hour earlier, we would have turned back. If it hit an hour later, we would have made it to Billings. If you had stayed in Helena one more hour, you would not have been on that road. If our car had died 5 miles earlier or later, you might have missed us in the storm." She paused. "Sometimes I think Nathan was watching. That he sent you to us because he could not be there himself. That he knew we would need someone exactly like you at exactly that moment." Bear considered this. He was not religious, had stopped believing in divine plans when Emma died. But he could not deny the precision of coincidence that night. the narrow window where disaster and salvation overlapped. Maybe, he said, or maybe the world is just chaos, and sometimes chaos works in our favor. Either way, I'm glad we were there. Glad we stopped. Glad you are all alive. Ellie touched his arm. So am I. Every single day. Shade. As afternoon turned to evening, the crowd began to thin. Families heading home. Kids tired from running. Adults tired from talking. The Iron Riders prepared to ride back to Clearwater. But Roz stopped Bear before he could reach his motorcycle. Wait, I have something for you. She ran to her mother's car, came back with a wrapped package, large and flat, heavy enough that she carried it with both hands. What's this? Open it. Bear unwrapped the paper carefully. Inside was a framed photograph, professional quality, mounted behind glass. The image showed the mile marker 47 memorial stone, the inscription visible and clear. But someone had added something, had placed items around the stone. A child's drawing of a motorcycle, a purple butterfly made of construction paper, a small American flag, a toy truck, photos of smiling children. I went back there last month, Roz explained. The memorial has become something bigger. People leave things, travelers who see it and stop, families who hear the story and want to be part of it. It's like a shrine now to second chances, to people who stop, to hope. Bear stared at the photograph, his vision blurred. I wanted you to see what you started, Roz continued. It's not just about us anymore. It's about everyone who has been saved by a stranger. Everyone who has been that stranger. Every moment when someone chose compassion over convenience. Bear could not speak, could only nod. Roz smiled. There's something else. Turn it over. Bear flipping the frame. On the back was an inscription engraved into the wood. The man who stopped. In memory of Emma Rose Thornwood, whose legacy lives in every life her father saves. Bear's knees went weak. He sat down hard on the curb, the frame resting on his lap. Roz sat beside him, put her arm around his shoulders. Emma didn't die for nothing, Roz said softly. She died so you could save us, so you could save all the people your story has inspired. Her life mattered. Her death mattered. You matter. Bear wept, openly, without shame. Tears he had held back for over a decade. Grief and gratitude mixing together until they were the same thing. Axel appeared on his other side, sat down without a word. Then Hawk, then the others. 8 men on a curb holding space for their brother's pain, their brother's healing. They sat until the tears stopped, until Bear could breathe again, until the weight he had carried for so long felt just a little bit lighter. The ride back to Clearwater was quiet. 8 motorcycles moving through twilight. The sun had set, but the sky still held light. That blue hour when day and night exist together, when the world feels suspended between what was and what will be. Bear led the formation, but his mind was elsewhere. On Emma, on Roz, on the photograph in his saddlebag, on the memorial that had grown from one night into something larger than any of them. He thought about the ripples, the chain reaction that started when he decided to stop instead of passing by. Ellie and her children alive. Roz's program saving hundreds of kids. Those kids going home to families who did not have to bury them. Those families staying whole, staying intact. Ripples spreading outward in patterns too complex to track, too beautiful to measure. How many lives had been touched because 8 men on motorcycles refused to look away? Hundreds, thousands. The number did not matter. Each individual life mattered. Each person who lived because of a choice made in a blizzard 4.5 years ago. They reached Clearwater as full dark settled in. The clubhouse lights were on. Someone had prepared for their return. Music played from inside. Food waited. A gathering of brothers celebrating one of their own being honored. Celebrating the work they did together. The mission they shared. But Bear did not go inside right away. He sat on his motorcycle in the parking lot, looking at the clubhouse, at the place that had become his truest home, at the brothers who had become his truest family. His phone buzzed, a text from Roz. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for being you. Love you, Uncle Bear. Uncle Bear, she had never called him that before. The words hit him harder than expected. He was not her uncle by blood, but by choice, by action, by showing up again and again and again. Family was not just who you were born to, it was who chose you back, who stayed when staying was hard, who showed up when showing up mattered. Bear had lost his biological family. Emma dead. Sarah moved away and remarried. They barely spoke anymore. The pain was too much, the reminders too heavy. They had loved each other once, but sometimes love was not enough to overcome grief. But he had found a different family, brothers in leather, a widow and her 5 children, a community that saw past his appearance to the man underneath, a legacy that would outlive him. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. 6 years to the day since Emma died. 11 years since the drunk driver crossed the median. Bear woke early in the small apartment above his shop. He dressed in dark jeans and a clean flannel shirt. He grabbed the purple flowers he had bought the day before. Emma's favorite color, always purple. The cemetery was empty when he arrived. Too early for most visitors. The grave stretched across a hillside. White stones marking lives that had ended. Stories that had stopped. Futures that never happened. Emma's stone was near a tree. Bear had chosen the spot carefully. She had loved climbing trees, loved sitting in branches, reading books. This tree would shade her in summer, shelter her in winter, keep her company when he could not be there. He knelt in the snow, placed the purple flowers against the stone, traced her name with his finger. Emma Rose Thornwood, forever 9, forever loved. "Hey, baby girl," he said quietly. "It's been a year since I was here last. I know I should come more often, but it's hard. Being here, remembering, feeling how much I miss you." The wind moved through the tree branches, gentle, almost like a whisper. "I have so much to tell you, so much has happened. Remember that night I told you about last year? The family in the storm, Roz, the oldest girl. She started a program, teaching kids how to survive, how to be safe, how to help each other. She won an award for it, a big one. And she said it was because of me, because of us, because of what you taught me about never giving up." Bear's voice cracked, but he kept going. 500 kids have gone through her program. 12 of them used what they learned to save lives. 12 families that are still whole because Roz decided to turn her trauma into something good. Because I was on that highway at that exact moment. Because you prepared me to be there. He wiped his eyes. "I used to think you dying was the worst thing that ever happened, that it was senseless, random, cruel, and it was all those things. But Emma, baby, it was also the thing that made me into someone who could save 6 people, who could inspire a girl to teach hundreds of kids, who could change how people see bikers and strangers and help." Bear looked up at the sky, blue and endless, the same color as Emma's eyes. "Your death had meaning, not because you died, but because I lived. Because I took the pain and the guilt and the grief and I used it. I let it make me someone who stops instead of driving past, who helps instead of looking away, who shows up when showing up is hard." He placed his hand on the cold stone. "I know you are proud of me. Roz told me you would be, and I think she is right. I think you have been watching. I think you sent me to that highway, sent me to that family, used me to save them because that is who you were. Someone who cared about people, who wanted everyone to be okay, who believed in helping." The wind picked up, snow swirled around him, but Bear did not feel cold. "I love you, baby girl. I miss you every single day. That will never change. But the missing does not hurt as much as it used to, because you are still with me. In every choice I make, in every person I help, in every life that is better because you were my daughter." He stood, kissed his fingers, pressed them to her name on the stone. "Merry Christmas, Emma. I will see you next year." Bear turned to leave. Then he heard tires on gravel. He looked toward the cemetery entrance. A familiar car pulled in. Ellie's rental, the car parked, doors opened, 6 people stepped out. Ellie and all 5 children. They walked toward him through the snow. Roz carried flowers, white roses. Owen held a small stuffed bear. Declan had a card. They stopped a few feet from Emma's grave. Respectful, waiting for permission. "We didn't want you to be alone today," Ellie said softly. "Not on Christmas Eve. Not at Emma's grave." Bear's throat was too tight to speak. He nodded. Roz stepped forward, placed the white roses beside Bear's purple flowers. "For Emma," she said, "from the family she saved through her father." Declan placed the card against the stone. It was handmade, construction paper and marker. The twins' artwork, butterflies and flowers, and the words, "Thank you, Emma," in careful letters. Owen handed his stuffed bear to Bear. "For Emma, so she has someone to hug." Bear took the toy, placed it carefully against the headstone. It sat there looking small and soft against the cold marble. They stood together in silence. A widow and her 5 children, a biker who had lost his daughter, all of them connected by one night when the world could have ended but did not. Ellie took Bear's hand. Roz took his other hand. The children formed a circle around Emma's grave, holding hands, making a chain. The same formation they had used to survive the storm. "Thank you, Emma," Ellie said, "for giving us your father when we needed him most, for preparing him to be our angel, for teaching him to stop, to help, to care. We will never forget you. We will never forget what your life meant, what your death made possible." They stood until the cold became too much, until Owen started shivering, until the moment felt complete. As they walked back to the cars, Roz fell into step beside Bear. "Does it help knowing that her death led to us living?" Bear thought about the question, gave it the weight it deserved. "It doesn't make her death okay. Nothing will ever make that okay. But it gives it context, meaning, purpose. It makes my survival bearable. Because I am not just the father who lost a child. I am the man who saved 6 people because losing my child taught me the value of every single life." Roz nodded. "That makes sense." They reached the cars. Ellie had brought thermoses of hot chocolate. She poured cups for everyone. They stood in the cemetery parking lot drinking cocoa in the cold Christmas Eve morning, breathing steam, watching the sun rise over the hills. "Come to Lillian's for dinner tonight," Ellie said. "We are having a small thing. Just family. We would love for you to be there." Bear started to decline. He always spent Christmas Eve alone. It was his ritual, his penance, his way of honoring Emma's memory. But this year felt different. This year he understood that honoring her memory did not mean suffering alone. It meant living fully, connecting deeply, being present with the people his daughter had helped him save. "I would like that," Bear said. "Thank you." That evening, Bear rode to Billings. The Iron Riders came with him, all 8 of them. Brothers who understood that family dinners were sacred, that being included mattered, that sometimes the greatest gift you could give someone was showing up. Lillian's house was small, but it held 15 people without feeling crowded. The Iron Riders filled the living room, their leather vests hanging on coat hooks by the door, their voices mixing with children's laughter and kitchen sounds and Christmas music playing softly. Dinner was roast chicken and mashed potatoes, green beans and rolls, simple food made special by the company, by the gratitude that saturated every conversation, by the knowledge that 6 of the people at this table should not be here but were. After dinner, Roz stood up, clinked her glass with a spoon. The room went quiet. "I have an announcement," she said, "and a gift." She pulled a wrapped package from under the tree, large and flat, similar to the one she had given Bear in June. She handed it to him. "This is for all of you, for the Iron Riders, for what you did and what you keep doing." Bear unwrapped it slowly. The other bikers gathered around. Inside was a book, hardcover, professional binding. The title embossed in silver letters. "The Man Who Stopped a Story of Angels in Leather." By Rosalind Brennan. Bear stared at the cover. It showed a photograph of motorcycles in snow, 8 headlights cutting through white darkness. "Open it," Roz said. Bear opened to the dedication page. Read it aloud. "For Garrett Bear Thornwood in the Iron Riders Motorcycle Club, who taught me that heroes wear leather, that angels ride motorcycles. That help comes from the most unexpected places. And for Emma Rose Thornwood, whose legacy lives in every life her father saves. This story is yours." Bear flipped up through the pages. It was all there. The storm, the rescue, the aftermath, the program, the ripples, everything that had happened since that night, written in Roz's clear, honest voice, with photographs and interviews and testimonies from the kids her program had saved. I finished it last month, Roz explained. It gets published in February. National release. The advance money is going to fund scholarships. The Emma Thornwood Memorial Scholarships for kids who have lost parents, who are struggling, who need help to keep moving forward. Bear could not speak, could not process what he was holding. A book, a legacy, Emma's name in print ensuring she would never be forgotten. Axel placed his hand on Bear's shoulder. She did good, brother. Your girl did real good. Bear nodded, unable to form words. Roz came to him, hugged him tight. Thank you, she whispered, for stopping, for saving us, for being exactly who we needed exactly when we needed you. This book is my way of making sure the world knows what you did, who you are, why it matters. The evening continued with dessert and coffee and children running in circles until exhaustion caught them. Owen fell asleep on Bear's lap. The 8-year-old curled up against the big man's chest, breathing deeply, trusting completely. Bear held the boy, felt the small heartbeat against his own. This child who had almost died at 5 months old, who was alive now because 8 men on motorcycles refused to let him go, who would grow up knowing that strangers could be angels. That help existed, that the world contained more good than evil. Around midnight, the Iron Riders prepared to leave. They had a long ride back to Clearwater, but it had been worth it, being here, being included, being reminded why they did what they did. Ellie walked Bear to his motorcycle. The night was cold but clear, stars visible in patterns that made the universe feel close and infinite at the same time. Thank you for coming, Ellie said, for being part of this, part of us. I thank you for including me, for letting me be Uncle Bear, for making me family. You earned that, the night you stopped, the moment you chose to help. You became family then. Everything since has just been honoring what was already true. She hugged him. Bear hugged her back. Two people who had saved each other in different ways, on different timelines. Both necessary, both real. The convoy pulled out, 8 motorcycles rumbling through the quiet Billings streets, heading south toward home. Bear rode with the book in his saddlebag. Roz's words pressed against his back. Emma's name carried forward into a future that would remember her. Remember them all. He thought about ripples again, about chain reactions, about the moment one person's choice intersects with another person's need and creates something larger than either of them alone. He had stopped on a highway 4.5 years ago. That choice saved 6 lives. Those 6 lives went on to touch hundreds more. Those hundreds would touch thousands. The mathematics of compassion were exponential, infinite, unmeasurable. And it all started with one moment, one decision, one man who saw people suffering and refused to look away. Bear understood now what Emma had been trying to tell him with her last look. She had not been asking why he did not save her. She had been telling him to save someone else, to use his pain, to let his grief become purpose, to be there for the next person who needed him. His daughter's final gift was teaching him how to stop, how to see, how to help. She prepared him for that exact moment on that exact highway. She made him into the man who could save Eleanor Brennan and her 5 children. And in saving them, he saved himself. The book released in February to unexpected success. It climbed bestseller lists, generated thousands of reviews, inspired news stories and podcast interviews and speaking requests. Roz handled it all with the same steady confidence she brought to everything else. But the real impact was quieter, more personal. Letters arrived at the Iron Riders Clubhouse from people who had read the book, who had been inspired to start their own programs, to volunteer, and to stop for strangers, to be the help they wished had been there when they needed it. A man in Oregon wrote about pulling over for a stranded family because he remembered Bear's story. A woman in Minnesota started a motorcycle club dedicated to escorting abuse victims to safe houses. A teenager in Texas began teaching survival skills at his high school because Roz's example showed him it was possible. The ripples continued spreading, wider and wider, further than any of them could track. In April, the Emma Thornwood Memorial Scholarships awarded their first recipients. 25 kids who had lost parents, who were struggling financially, who deserved a chance to keep moving forward. Each scholarship came with a copy of Roz's book and a letter from Bear explaining why Emma's memory mattered, why their lives mattered, why they should never give up. Bear attended the award ceremony, met each scholarship recipient, looked them in the eyes and told them the same thing he told himself every day. You are here for a reason. Your life matters. Whatever you have survived has prepared you for something important. Do not waste it. Do not hide from it. Use it. Let it make you into someone who helps, someone who stops, someone who shows up. The kids listened. Some cried, some nodded, some shook his hand with grips that said they understood. They would remember. They would carry this forward. Summer arrived again. The Iron Riders prepared for their annual ride. Bigger now. Over 300 motorcycles from 8 states. They would ride from Clearwater to Helena, stopping at the mile marker 47 Memorial, ending at the Children's Hospital for the charity event that had started everything. The night before the ride, Bear sat in the clubhouse looking at the wall of photographs. The collection had grown. Pictures of kids they had helped, families they had supported, events they had hosted, lives they had touched. And there in the center, the original photograph from the spring cookout 4.5 years ago, Ellie and her children, 8 bikers, all of them smiling, all of them alive. Beside it now hung the cover of Roz's book, and next to that a framed copy of Emma's obituary, her school picture, her bright smile and purple shirt, forever 9, forever loved. The 3 images together told a complete story. Loss in rescue, in legacy. Pain transformed into purpose. Death giving meaning to life in ways no one could have predicted. Bear stood alone in the quiet clubhouse. He raised a glass of water. To Emma, he said to the photographs, to the empty room, to the daughter who would never grow old, but whose impact would never fade. Thank you for making me into someone worth being. Thank you for teaching me to stop. Thank you for every life I have saved because you prepared me to save them. He drank, set the glass down, turned off the lights. Tomorrow he would ride, with his brothers beside him, with Ellie and her children following in a car, with hundreds of bikers who understood that their appearance scared people, but their actions could change worlds. They would stop at the memorial. They would honor the moment. They would continue forward, because that is what they did. They showed up. They stayed. They helped. They stopped. And in stopping, they saved not just the people in front of them, but themselves, their communities, their world. One choice at a time, one moment at a time, one person at a time. Bear walked out of the clubhouse into the Montana night. The stars burned overhead, infinite and eternal. Emma was up there somewhere. He believed that, not in heaven, not in any religious sense, but in the way that matter never disappears. It just changes form, becomes something else, something new. Emma had changed form, had become purpose, had become the force that pushed Bear toward that highway, that gave him strength to carry children through storms, that made him into someone who understood the sacred responsibility of survival. She lived in every kid who went through Roz's program, in every scholarship recipient, in every person who read the book and decided to be better, to help more, to stop when stopping mattered. His daughter was not gone. She had multiplied, had become hundreds of lives, thousands, an infinite chain of moments when her memory pushed someone toward compassion instead of convenience. That was immortality, not living forever, but living in the actions of others, in the choices your existence inspires, in the ripples that never stop spreading. Bear started his motorcycle. The engine roared, familiar, honest, true. He rode home through the darkness, not running from anything, not chasing anything, just riding, present, grateful, at peace. Tomorrow he would ride again, with his family beside him, with his daughter's memory pushing him forward, with the knowledge that sometimes the worst moments of our lives prepare us for the best moments of someone else's. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. The man who stopped kept moving. But he stopped whenever stopping mattered, and that made all the difference.